We meet our unnamed protagonist, a man in his 70s with white hair and a weathered face, alone on his sailboat somewhere in the Indian Ocean. He wakes in his cabin to discover water sloshing around. Investigating, he finds that his yacht, the Virginia Jean, has collided with a floating shipping container during the night. The large red container, which appears to have fallen from a cargo ship, has torn a hole in the hull of his boat above the waterline on the starboard side. Water has entered the cabin, damaging much of his equipment and electronics. The man assesses the situation with remarkable calm. He examines the damage methodically, his face showing concern, but not panic. The collision has punctured the hull and also damaged his navigation and communication systems. He returns to the deck and uses a boat hook to push the shipping container away from his yacht. The container, still partially filled with what appears to be sneakers or athletic shoes, slowly drifts away from the vessel. Once it's clear, he can better assess the damage to his boat's exterior. The gash is significant, but appears manageable if he can seal it properly. The sailor retrieves his repair supplies and sets to work. He uses a sea anchor to stabilize the boat. He patches the hole from the outside with fiberglass cloth and resin, creating a makeshift repair. The work is physically demanding for a man his age, but he completes it with the practiced efficiency of someone who has spent considerable time at sea. After several attempts and adjustments, he successfully seals the breach well enough to prevent further water intrusion. Back inside the cabin, he begins the arduous task of cleaning up. He uses a manual pump to remove the standing water from the cabin, working the pump handle repeatedly in the cramped space. He then sets about trying to salvage what he can. His attempts to revive the electronic equipment prove futile. The salt water has corroded the circuits beyond repair. His laptop, GPS, and radio are all casualties of the collision. With his communication systems destroyed, he takes readings of the sun's position, calculating his location using celestial navigation, a skill that requires both knowledge and patience. He plots his position on one of his charts, determining that he's approximately in the Sumatra Strait shipping lane, which gives him hope that he might be spotted by passing vessels. The sailor attempts to establish some normalcy, preparing a simple meal and going through the motions of his daily routine. On the third day, the weather begins to change. The sky darkens and the wind picks up significantly. He prepares the Virginia Jean for rough weather, securing loose items, closing hatches, and adjusting his sails. The sea becomes increasingly violent as a major storm approaches. Waves grow larger, rocking the boat dramatically. He moves about the deck, securing lines and preparing for what's clearly going to be a significant weather event. The storm hits with full force during the night. Massive waves crash over the deck as rain lashes down in sheets. The sailor struggles to maintain control of his vessel, fighting the wheel as the boat is tossed violently. Water pours over the sides with each wave, and the wind howls through the rigging. Inside the cabin, unsecured items crash around as the boat pitches at extreme angles. He wedges himself into position, trying to ride out the storm while maintaining some control over the boat's heading. The violence of the storm intensifies. A particularly large wave crashes across the deck with such force that it tears away equipment and threatens to capsize the boat. The mass strain is visible as the rigging pulls tight. Another massive wave hits, and the boat tips severely, nearly capsizing. Water floods the cabin through the companionway. The sailor is thrown about inside, grabbing for handholds. The boat capsizes, turning completely upside down. The boat rolls back over, emerging battered and damaged. Daylight reveals the full extent of the disaster. The storm has largely passed, but the Virginia Jean is devastated. He realizes that Virginia Jean is slowly sinking. The hull damage is too severe to repair at sea, especially without his materials, most of which were lost in the storm. He makes the difficult decision to abandon ship. He quickly gathers what supplies he can salvage. He fills containers with fresh water from his remaining tanks, grabs canned food, and retrieves his navigation tools. He prepares his life raft for deployment. As the Virginia Jean settles lower in the water, he takes a final look at the boat that has been his home. Now adrift in the life raft, he takes stock of his situation. He's in an enclosed inflatable raft roughly 8 feet in diameter, with a canopy providing shade and some protection from the elements. He has limited water, perhaps a week's supply if he's careful, some canned goods, his navigation tools, and signaling equipment. He's somewhere in the shipping lanes, which means there's a possibility of being spotted. But he has no way to call for help or control his direction. He establishes a routine in the raft. Each day, he takes sextant readings to track his position and drift. He carefully rations his water and food, allowing himself small amounts at measured intervals. He scans the horizon constantly for ships. The life raft is cramped and uncomfortable, offering little room to move or stretch. The heat during the day is oppressive under the canopy, but it provides essential shade. Days pass in the life raft with a monotonous similarity. He maintains his routine, continues his rationing, and watches ceaselessly for rescue. The isolation is profound. There is nothing but ocean in every direction, no sound except wind and waves, no movement except the rocking of the raft. His face shows the strain of his ordeal, weathered further by sun, salt, and stress. On one occasion, he spots a ship on the horizon. He immediately retrieves a flare and fires it into the sky, but the vessel continues on its course. They never saw him. He sits back in the raft, the disappointment visible on his face. But he doesn't allow himself to despair. He simply returns to his routine. His water supply dwindles alarmingly. Another ship appears, this time closer. Again, he fires flares, multiple flares. It becomes clear they haven't seen him. The massive container ship moves by at a distance of perhaps a mile. The despair that follows this second failure is deeper, more difficult to overcome. His condition deteriorates markedly. He's now severely dehydrated and weakened by hunger. His movements are sluggish, and he spends much of his time simply lying in the raft, conserving energy. The infection on his head has worsened, angry and red. His lips are cracked and bleeding from the sun and salt. Yet he continues his routine as best he can, taking readings, rationing his final drops of water, scanning for ships even though his eyes can barely focus. That night, a third ship appears, marked by lights in the darkness. He can barely muster the energy to respond, but survival instinct drives him. He lights the stove inside the raft. The flame catches the fabric of the raft almost immediately. Fire spreads rapidly across the synthetic material, filling the confined space with smoke and flames. He escapes the burning raft, slipping into the dark water as the flames consume his last refuge. He allows himself to sink beneath the surface. The water closes over his head, and he descends into the depths. Hands grasp his body, pulling him upward.